Once upon a time, gods ruled the earth. Unlike we believed, they did not just watch from the skies or issue commands to mortals. They directly governed humans for over 241,000 years. Who are these kings with such unbelievable timelines? What was their reign like? King Enmengalana was the fourth king of the antediluvian era. Yet another ruler from Bad Tibira, his name was found etched into the ancient Weld-Blundell Prism. The King List recorded his reign as 28,800 years, mirroring the earlier king Alulim. But while Alulim symbolized divine authority and Alalgar symbolized structure, Enmengalana was different, and it starts with his name. Enmengalana is translated to mean Lord of the Celestial Me. This linked him directly to heavenly knowledge. In Sumerian tradition, Me refers to divine decrees gifted by the gods. Does this mean that Enmengalana had something more? Yes, he did. Enmengalana was a guardian of this sacred information handed over by the gods. This was an intellectual king, one not focused on war or construction, but on interfacing with the heavens. His reign at Bad Tibira continues the city's mystical significance. For this king, ruling was not just about forging metals. No wonder researchers argue that under Enmengalana's rule, humanity first tracked celestial cycles and began to understand the rhythms of the universe. He was that king. So when you think about the origin of astronomy, remember that this king, whose reign spanned 28,800 years, this was his forte. Whether you are a Scorpio or a Sagittarius, there is a chance the art came from King Enmengalana. This wasn't a king counting seasons. This was a king who read the sky like scripture. It doesn't end there. The idea that Enmengalana ruled with celestial awareness led some theorists to suggest he was more than a scholar. They say he was a representative of the stars. Historians point to the possibility that such early rulers were not just influenced by extraterrestrial beings. Instead, they were a combination of both human and divine, and their goal was to maintain balance on Earth. When you think about it, King Enmengalana's connection to the Me supports this theory. Perhaps in modern terms, he might be compared to a data administrator operating across time. His rule was not about governance in the human sense, no. It was about maintaining resonance between heaven and earth. This led scholars to name him the Celestial Engineer. Isn't this accurate? But if you'd like to learn about a king who went overboard in his spirituality, King Dumuzid is that man, or well, that god. After Enmengalana, the next in the antediluvian line was Dumuzid. Also known as Dumuzi the Shepherd, his name appears not only on the Sumerian King List, but in later Mesopotamian myths. According to the list, he ruled for 36,000 years, reigning from the city of Bad Tibira, like his predecessor, Enmengalana. However, Dumuzid's story blurs the line between ruler and deity. How so, you ask? King Dumuzid wasn't remembered as a king of war or infrastructure. Instead, this king was remembered for his relationship with the goddess Inanna and his symbolic death and rebirth. You heard that right. He was the king who was said to die and be born again. This earned him the title Shepherd, as he was viewed as a strong and sacrificial leader. Another thing that makes Dumuzid unusual is that he transcends the king list. He shows up in the epic of Gilgamesh, Inanna's descent to the underworld, and in numerous hymns. Unlike other kings, he was absorbed into the divine pool over time. His legacy was more than political. It was too good to be true. In no time, Dumuzid was no longer regarded as a man. The Sumerians began to view him as a god of vegetation, cycles, and the dying earth. His story echoed in later myths like Osiris, Tammuz, and even Jesus. In the myths, Inanna's descent to the underworld ends with Dumuzid being chosen to replace her. His punishment? Death for half the year to symbolize seasonal decay. But he always found a way to return every spring. The resurrection factor represents an archetype for most religions today. What do you think? Is King Dumuzid just being glorified after death, or was he always something more? King Dumuzid reigned for an auspicious 36,000 years. This is a number too exact and symbolic to ignore. What's more, his transformation from being respected as a king to being a god marked a turning point in the Kings List. After each rebirth, the Sumerians knew they weren't dealing with a mortal anymore. This was a different kind of ruler. King Dumuzid ruled, died, and returned through rebirths, and just like his mystical reign, his legacy never left. The next king on the Sumerian King List ruled not from Eridu or Bad Tibira, but from a city called Larak. This is a city that to this day remains lost. His name was Ensipadsidana, and like others before him, his reign lasted 28,800 years, a perfect 8 Sars. Little is known about the king himself. He left behind no legends, no myths, no hymns, and yet his presence on the king list was precisely recorded. So what was special about this king? What sets Ensipadsidana apart is not what we know about him, but where he ruled. The lost city, Larak. Larak is one of the 5 antediluvian cities listed in Sumerian myth as existing before the flood. But no physical trace of it has ever been found. This stark absence only deepens the queries. If the Sumerians revered these cities as holy, and Larak was one of them, what could have made it so important? Let's talk about Larak for a moment. Ancient texts mention Larak only in passing, rare, brief references. One time it was described as a city of healing and judgment, possibly linked to the deity Ninurta, god of war, agriculture, and law. On other grounds, scholars suggest Larak might have existed in the north of Sumer, possibly near the Tigris River. Others claim it could have been entirely metaphorical. Maybe it's a spiritual stronghold, not a geographical one, but it goes deeper than that. Some researchers dared to propose something bolder, that Larak, like Eridu, was a functional part of a global grid. That's to say that Larak was an ancient energy system established by the gods to regulate natural and spiritual energies across the land. In that system, Ensipadsidana wasn't a king in the modern sense. Instead, he was a guardian of balance. His reign wasn't forgotten. Maybe it was just hidden along with the city he governed. Suspicious, right? The Sumerian Kings List gets more interesting. Right after King Ensipadsidana came Enmenduranna, ruler of Sippar, another of the 5 antediluvian cities said to exist before the Great Flood. His reign, according to the King List, lasted 21,000 years, a number that aligns with Sumer's divine math system of Sars and sacred cycles. Enmenduranna is known for more than just his years on the throne. Ancient texts refer to him as a king who had a special relationship with the gods. They called him the ruler, who received divine wisdom directly from the heavens. Imagine communicating directly with the heavens. How supreme is that? If you think that is very intriguing, brace yourself. The most intriguing claim tied to King Enmenduranna is that he was taken to heaven without dying. This phrase echoes another ancient figure, Enoch, from the Hebrew book of Genesis. Do you remember him? Enoch was said to have walked with God and was taken without experiencing death. The parallels have led many researchers to draw direct comparisons between the two. Whose story is the truth? Or did one myth copy from the other? Maybe we will never know. In Mesopotamian texts, Enmendarana is referred to as the one who was initiated into the secrets of the gods. He is said to have learned divination, astronomy, and celestial patterns while communing with divine beings. If you wonder how possible this was, King Enmendarana was said to have communicated with these beings through a literal craft that took him high into the heavens. When you look at it, his ascension may not have been a mere metaphor. It could mean physical removal, or perhaps a dimensional shift, placing him beyond normal human reach. This was no ordinary king. He was a bridge between the terrestrial and the divine. The next king on the Sumerian list had a different ball to play. Unlike Enmendarana, he did not ascend into heaven without returning. This was a different Sumerian king, and what made him special is that he was the last king before the flood. Enter King Ubara-Tutu. This is the last of the 8 antediluvian kings recorded in the Sumerian King List, and he was the ruler of the city of Shuruppak. His reign spanned a whopping 18,600 years, a duration that, while still far beyond human capabilities, is the shortest of the pre-flood kings. To the surprise of many, his rule marked a dramatic turning point in the narrative. His city, Shuruppak, was located on the banks of the Euphrates and has been excavated by modern archaeologists. It was real, and at some point around 3000 BCE, it was devastated by a massive flood. According to Mesopotamian texts, including the Eridu Genesis, Ubara-Tutu was the father of Ziusudra, the Sumerian counterpart of Noah. Like the Bible story, when the gods decided to flood the earth, Ziusudra was warned by the god Enki to build a boat. This elevates King Ubara-Tutu to more than a name on a list. King Tutu was the patriarch of the last generation before the Great Reset. This made him the end of an era, and the link between myth and memory. How surreal. But after King Ubara-Tutu's reign, something devastating happened. The Great Flood. The Eridu Genesis places the Great Flood immediately after Ubara-Tutu's reign. The King List even includes a sharp division. Then, the flood swept over. Unlike the earlier kings, Ubara-Tutu is tied directly to this catastrophe that cuts across global mythologies. From the biblical flood of Noah to the Greek story of Deucalion and Hindu tales of Manu, there was one huge flood sent to destroy the earth. And along with it went the great king, Ubara-Tutu.